October of 1962, the world went on as usual. People went to work. Children went to school. Leaders spoke confidently about the future. And almost no one knew that humanity was only days, perhaps hours, away from ceasing to exist. The Cold War had already lasted more than a decade. Two blocks, two ideologies, two systems watching each other in silence, each waiting for the other to make the first mistake. Both possessed enough weapons to destroy the planet several times over, and both believed the other would never dare to press the button. That belief was what kept the world standing until something changed. Not in Washington, not in Moscow, but on a small island in the Caribbean, Cuba, just 145 kilometers from the American coast. After the Cuban Revolution, the island had aligned itself with the Soviet Union. For the United States, this was already unacceptable. For the Soviets, it was an opportunity. In absolute secrecy, the Soviet Union made a strategic decision to install nuclear missiles on Cuban soil, not as a provocation, but as a response. The United States had already done the same in Turkey and Italy, placing nuclear weapons within direct range of Moscow. For weeks, Soviet ships crossed the Atlantic. Equipment was unloaded at night. Missile sites were built far from cities, all of it hidden from the world, until October 14, 1962. An American U-2 spy plane captured images that would change history. Photographs, simple, grainy, but unmistakable. Nuclear missile launch sites under construction in Cuba. At that moment, the global balance ceased to exist. There was no longer enough distance to guarantee time to respond. If those missiles became operational, a nuclear strike could reach Washington in just a few minutes. When the photographs reached President Kennedy, the reality became undeniable. Within hours, Kennedy assembled a small group of advisors in secret meetings that would shape the fate of the world. The options on the table were brutal: an airstrike, a full invasion, or doing nothing and risking annihilation. Despite intense pressure from his generals, Kennedy refused to launch an immediate attack. Instead of launching an attack, Kennedy chose a different path: a naval blockade around Cuba. On October 22, 1962, Kennedy went on national television and revealed the crisis to the world. Across the country, families sat in silence, realizing how close the world was to nuclear war. Soviet ships carrying military equipment moved steadily toward the American blockade. Just miles from the blockade line, the Soviet ships slowed, and then turned back. The missiles in Cuba were still there, and the crisis was far from over. For days, the world stood one mistake away from nuclear war. Then, the unthinkable happened. A U-2 spy plane was shot down over Cuba. Despite enormous pressure to retaliate, Kennedy chose restraint and refused to strike back. Soon after, urgent messages from Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev began arriving in Washington. Khrushchev sent two very different letters, offering two very different paths out of the crisis. Behind the scenes, a secret agreement was formed that the public would not learn about for years. Slowly, the Soviet missiles in Cuba were dismantled and prepared for removal. Under international observation, the missiles were loaded onto Soviet ships and sent back across the Atlantic. There were no celebrations, no victory parades, just people returning to their daily lives, unaware of how close the world had come to ending. The crisis ended without explosions, but nothing truly returned to normal. The silence that followed was not peace. It was awareness. After the crisis, both sides understood how close they had come, not because of strategy, but because of misunderstanding. To prevent the next disaster, a direct communication line was created between Washington and Moscow, not to negotiate peace, but to make sure a single moment of confusion would not end the world. History remembers presidents, but the survival of the world depended on a man almost no one knew. Vasily Arkhipov was a Soviet naval officer aboard a submarine near Cuba. Cut off from communication and under attack by depth charges, two officers believed war had already begun. Protocol allowed a nuclear launch. Arkhipov refused. He delayed. That hesitation may have saved the world. Inside the submarine, conditions were unbearable. Air was running out. Temperatures rose. Communication with Moscow had been lost for days. Explosions echoed through the hull as American depth charges detonated nearby. To the crew, it felt like war had already begun. Decisions were being made in darkness, under pressure, with no certainty of what was happening above the surface. The most dangerous moments of the crisis were not driven by hatred or ideology. They were driven by confusion, misread signals, lost communication. Human beings forced to make decisions with incomplete information. The world did not come close to destruction because someone wanted war, but because systems moved faster than understanding. While decisions were being made in silence, the world continued as usual. People went to work. Children went to school. Streets were full. Lights were on. Most of humanity never knew how close everything came to ending. Survival did not announce itself. It passed unnoticed. The Cuban Missile Crisis is often remembered as a victory of diplomacy, but the truth is simpler and more unsettling. The world did not survive because it was wise. It survived because someone hesitated, because someone chose not to cross the line. That moment was a threshold, and humanity stepped back. What followed was not chaos, but silence. A silence heavy enough to bend decisions. Behind closed doors, analysts stared at lines, dots, and shadows, trying to predict the next move. No speeches, no applause. Only the quiet realization that one wrong interpretation could erase entire cities. The crisis was over, but the fear did not disappear. Leaders understood that the greatest danger was no longer intention, but error. A wrong signal, a delayed message, a system reacting too fast. From that moment on, the world lived under the knowledge that the next disaster would not be planned. It would be accidental. On October 28, 1962, the message finally arrived. Through static and radio waves, the world heard Khrushchev's words. The missiles would be removed from Cuba. After 13 days, the countdown stopped. The missiles were dismantled in silence. No speeches, no declarations. Steel was lowered carefully, as if even the machines understood how close the world had come. The missiles left the island the same way they arrived, by ship, without ceremony. Watched closely, not out of trust, but out of fear that history might repeat itself. The sky was watched one last time, not for enemies, but for confirmation. Proof that the missiles were truly gone, and that the silence would hold. There were no celebrations, only exhaustion. Those who understood the moment knew this was not victory, it was survival. Earned by hesitation, not force. For Khrushchev, the relief was complicated. The missiles were gone. The world was safer. But restraint carries a cost, and history does not always reward those who step back from the edge. Not every decision was announced. Some were made in silence, away from cameras, away from history books, because compromise, when visible, can be as dangerous as conflict. Months later, American missiles left Turkey. Quietly, without headlines, history remembers what is visible, not what is necessary. When the crisis ended, something else disappeared. The illusion of control. Both sides saw the truth. The world had survived, not because the system worked, but because it almost failed. The danger was never ideology, it was time. Decisions once measured in days had collapsed into minutes, and minutes leave no room for certainty. In 1962, the world reached a threshold. On one side, escalation. On the other, restraint. Humanity survived because someone chose to hesitate. The most important decision of the nuclear age was not to strike, not to prove strength, but to pause, to allow doubt to exist. In that hesitation, the world remained. Thresholds are not crossed in chaos. They are crossed when hesitation disappears. In 1962, hesitation saved the world. Next time, there may be no time to choose. History does not end with lessons. It ends with responsibility. Because the next threshold will not ask who we were, only who hesitates when it matters most.